We appreciate the diehards that want their CE and are sticking with us. So, welcome back. All right, we're going to continue with our agenda, and next on the agenda is Ms. Caroline, and she's going to go over some enforcement reports.
Okay, thank you. Yep. So G is the enforcement reports, and G.1 is the report on closed and dismissed complaints. So the chart behind G.1 identifies the complaints that were completed in the second quarter of fiscal year 23, so that was December through the end of February, and provides the detail on the method of closure with the year-to-date running total for the fiscal year. The bottom chart on page 1 compares those complaints that were closed with disciplinary action to those closed with other as a summary. Very proud of staff this quarter. I know I give this report to you every quarter, but we had 240 more complaints closed this past quarter. So we fully staffed this quarter, and I think our team did a really good job handling complaints.
That is impressive, Caroline. Is there any kind of, do you do any audit to ensure like the completion of the closure, or are they reported to you, or how, like, I know you have multiple people working for you, how do you ensure there's consistency in the way things are closed? Do all the closures come through you?
They don't all come through me. We do a lot of case reviews. We do a lot of, on the intake of the complaints, we spend a lot of time figuring out which investigative team will handle the complaint, and that they know kind of the direction of what we're thinking the ultimate will be if everything's proven true, because we believe the complaint in its truthfulness, veracity, until we can prove it otherwise. But we believe it to be true, and so that kind of helps us figure out, well, where do we think this is going to go? And then we do, each team that you're talking about, we do case reviews. So if something deviates from, the kind of planned path, then that way we're able to kind of look at the options for the resolution. If it needs to be altered, maybe it turns out that there's something that we didn't consider that will alter it to refer to legal, or that alters it that it's no violation. So we do case reviews within each team for those. And so I think that that's effective.
Okay. What percent would you say come as a case review?
Not too many, Lori. Probably each I don't have a really good number for you.
The nice thing is that this is, the audit, the internal audit report we heard earlier.
Right, which is what made me
was
think about.
And so they looked at all of those things to see if we had any risk, and that's where they came up with that satisfactory. They had a couple of recommendations, but Caroline and the team, changed that real quickly, so.
I guess I didn't really know. But again, what made me think that question was that because the audit, they didn't provide a whole lot of detail on what that entailed. And so I was just curious how much internal auditing we do.
What is the, when he was talking this morning on the audit, and he was talking about a closing checklist. What is that? Is that something that you do? Is it a list of questions that you ask yourself? What is that?
It's a good question. So we have a closing approval, which is someone for every complaint that a manager. I'm sorry.
It's a letter that you.
It's an internal memo to file
that
the manager has approved the closing of it. So that could be myself or one of the other managers in the enforcement team will review it to say that the substantive nature of the complaints investigation has been completed for whatever type of disposition that we're going to be using for its closing, and the management director directs what type of closing to provide. So that would be embedded within the chart, is it going to be investigation letter? Is it going to be investigation closed with verbal education? So it's detailing that on the internal memo to file. So then that's given back to the employee who handled the investigation, and that employee is supposed to document a closing checklist. And that's not that so the substantive nature of the complaint has been approved, but the closing checklist is in our back office system, that it has the correct status date that matches the closing date, that the field that references in the back office system is saying moves from saying open to closed and things like that. And we do reports so that when we generate this type of reporting for you, and then also subsequently for the LBB, we generate reports that kind of double check that, but each employee is supposed to be doing it as they go. And for certain employees who've been doing closings for a long time, they don't always complete the closing checklist, which is just, it's really to help a newer employee. And if you use it, some people do, just make sure that you're doing each one of the steps to close it properly in our back office system. It really has nothing to do with the fact of how the investigation was handled or how the disposition occurred. But that was lacking in some of the audited complaints that were pulled, and in my opinion, that's because those were handled by employees that closed a lot of complaints. So sometimes they overstep that. So they asked us not to create more work, but just to, if it's not going to have that we spot check those to make sure that they're being done appropriately. And then their other comment was that sometimes, again, on those ones that match our policies and procedures, so the manager has said, yes, this matches our policies and procedures, it's okay to be routed to be closed, physically closed in our system. That the reason for that, like matched our policy and procedure, wasn't included in the summary comment, again, in the back office system. So, because it captures a nice snapshot view for anyone to go in there and see why it was closed. You can see it's closed, but again, if you're not familiar, you may not know, oh, it matches our policy within our guidelines. So again, those just kind of clean up stuff. Yeah.
So I have a question, Caroline. On page 2, the fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23 change, the percent change, it's negative 2%. Is that a decrease in complaints?
So this is only the number, this would not be the number, this is a decrease in complaints that have been closed.
Okay.
The next chart that when we'll go to G.2, that'll be your number of open complaints that you have. I don't know, Jenny, on the first year to date, it's an ongoing total of the number that we're getting. We may be slightly down the number of complaints that received during fiscal year 23. We're about, currently we're only about 3 more months of the year, 3 more months of 23, right? We're about a little over 4,000 complaints received. So a little bit down probably, but probably on target. Yeah, there's time. There's time. There's time. There's time. Yeah, I mean, we definitely did some retraining and onboarded new employees since last summer, and so definitely saw a little bit of slowdown in the complaint resolution, but I'm very proud of the progress that was made over the last quarter.
Any other questions there? All right, you're on work raspberry.
So Jenny moves us along. G.2. So the top part is that year-to-year comparison for the number of complaints that were received by the board, and then close within that fiscal year. And then the bottom chart is your status of your open complaints from quarter to quarter. So looking at the last time that this report was ran in preparation for the board meeting on April 13th, there were 1,619 open complaints for the board, and then those are detailed in the aging category for you.
How many of your employees, how many are in your team that works on this?
So there's 27 enforcement personnel, and that includes supportive personnel and investigators. Yeah.
The nice thing is we continue to see our resolution time decrease, and so that's really a testament to the team, and even though I know that you've given a lot to legal, and you had to rehire and retrain, and you've done a really good job of doing that. This is great work. Any other questions on what you got to? All right, we're gonna skip over H.1 because we will need to do that at 1 o'clock. So Megan, do you want to take us through H.2 and then 3 and 4 at that time?
Yes. So H.2 is a report on all of the orders that have been entered by Julie or by Julie, Jimmy, and Ian under the failure to operate statute. These are the ones that you have authorized them to enter. This item does not need a vote, it's just for your information. If you don't have any questions on H2, we can move on to our next ones. Next up, we have H.3, and these are the proposed agreed board orders and default orders. And then we have H.4, which are the proposed remedial plans. These include both orders and remedial plans resulting from informal conferences and those proposed by mail per your previous instructions. You'll notice for the orders resulting from informal conference that the chart indicates the board members that were at that informal conference. If you participated in the informal conference, we would automatically recuse you from that vote. So unless you have any questions on these orders and remedial plans, we would need a motion to approve the proposed agreed board orders, default orders, and proposed remedial plans. So those are both items H.3 and H.4.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion.
I have a motion from Donnie, I have a second from Richard. And we're voting on both H.3 and H.4. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then we will go ahead and go to I.1. So I.1 is possible action on the position of the executive director. So we've kind of gone through the legislative calendar. Everybody knows where we are on that at the end of the month. That is put to bed. We'll know exactly where we are as far as pay rates. Currently, there is no, bill or rider that would allow us to hire somebody other than a pharmacist. So it will tell us exactly what our posting is. So currently, the plan is June 1st. We will post for the position based upon the information that we know. We know that's a super fast turnaround from the end of the legislation section, but we'll have it ready and just be able to drop in when it's needed. I will tell you the governor's office is aware of all of our actions, and they know what our plan is on here, but we really want to know what the class is, what the salary is, so that we can have everybody that would be eligible to, be able to apply. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask board members that are interested in serving. We will, between now and the last week of May, put together an interview panel. If you're interested in being on there, let me know. We will, just so you know the process, we will, like we do with every single one of our employees, we use rubrics with questions, and those questions have a grading with it. So the goal is to have posting out there, and then like that third week of June to be able to do in-person interviews, here in Austin. We might have to have a little bit of flexibility with, that end of the month, but we'd like to have interviews done, by the end of that.
You said the third week in June?
I'm sorry?
You said the third week in June?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at that third week of June. It could be the fourth, could be good, if we need to, but
So the week of the 12th?
so,
Probably not the week
Yep.
of the 12th.
So the week of the 19th?
Probably the week of the, if we're doing it in June, probably the week of the 19th or the 26th. Because if we post on June 1st,
yeah, we have to do this.
we have to give it a certain amount of time. So I mean, even if we did it on the week of the 19th, sorry, I'm interjecting. If we did it the week of the 19th, that's still just barely over 2 weeks of having it posted. So that's a super quick turnaround
So the
time.
26th.
Um,
Would that be safer?
Probably most likely.
The 26th, the week of the 26th.
So if you're interested, you definitely let me know, and then we'll put together a panel from there.
So would those interviews be in person or
Yes.
via Zoom?
Or do it in person. I mean, since COVID's over now, I think we can be in person. I think it's important enough that we do that.
Will they all be taking place in one day? Or would you do it like over the course of that week?
Probably a couple of days. It only depends upon how many candidates we get.
Right.
I hope it's a whole bunch and they're really good quality and it takes us 3 days to do it.
Right, okay.
I don't have the answer to that without knowing, who applies and what that's like. Questions? Thoughts?
So we, obviously we couldn't get it in for the consideration for a non-pharmacist, just because of the timing, or we just couldn't get that put in somehow, or, we did ask to be considered, but I'm not sure how it worked its way through or what.
Okay, you're gonna stop me if I say something I cannot say. So,
Yeah.
there was a group, a pharmacy group that took it forward for us. It was kind of short timing.
Sure, it was
So-
that time.
So there was a couple of things that they kind of looked at, and it was because of the short timing, they couldn't find necessarily somebody to pick it up. Part of it too was if they felt like it was gonna be a little controversial. We were not in agreement
Yeah.
that it could be a non-pharmacist, and the organizations were necessarily not in agreement. And
Yeah.
so, they felt like it was,
Well, it's not the best look to come divided,
yeah.
or something like that. I totally understand that. So, obviously, we hope that we get applicants, because that's really the consideration, getting good applicants that can, serve and manage the agency. It's a complicated, role. So that's really what the consideration, it's the only consideration. All things considered, we all wanted a pharmacist, everybody did.
And, I mean,
Session's not over.
sessions aren't over.
Not over yet.
Stranger, I still remember the day that I called Gay Dotson and said, Gay, so was a controlled substance, and Gay said, what are you talking about? And I said, it just came through as a rider. It got slipped in on a really weird bill. So, we never
You don't
know
know.
what might occur.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure we have all of the information before we go.
No, it's good to post when you have all the answers.
Yeah. Other questions? All right. We're still a little ahead of our 1 o'clock, so I will go through our miscellaneous, unless there are some objections. The first question is J.1, which is a question I always ask, and that is, are there any items that we want to be placed on the agenda for staff to look at or be a discussion item? None at this time? All right, let us know. So as far as our upcoming conferences and events, first of all, I want to formally thank both Iona and Brad for attending TSHP on our behalf and doing the law review. It was very much appreciated, and I thank you for that. Our next event is NABP, National Association of Boards of Pharmacy. It's Nashville, Tennessee, May 10th through 12th. Rick Hernandez, myself, Ian, and I just went blank. Donna Monmore, that's why I was going blank. Donna will be there, so the board is in attendance. Again, I appreciate everybody's input on the resolutions, that will be helpful, and of course, as always, we'll come back with a report. We do have informal conferences on May 16th, June 6th through 8th, and then July 11th to 13th. I did see from Amy that those slots are all filled, so please make sure they're on your calendar. The next is the Texas Pharmacy Association. TPA is going to be in Houston on July 28th through 30th. Rick, I need to ask you a question about that after the meeting. I want to see if maybe you'll do the law review there. So if you can ask me about that later.
Rick Tiffany?
Yeah. I got my degree from mail order.
Any way I can help you, no problem.
All right. So originally I thought I would do it, but then I forgot. We have a family thing that week, so it would be really weird and hard. And then, of course, we can put it on the calendar. You know, our months are set as far as our schedule. And our next board meeting is August 1st on 2023. So we are still a little ahead of what we need to do at 1 o'clock. So we will take a 8 according to this clock, 8-minute break, and then we'll come back and have John take us through H.1. All right. We've got one last thing on our agenda, H.1. Would you like to lead us through it, please?
Absolutely. On January 13th, 2023, a proposal for decision was issued by 2 administrative law judges, or ALJs, of the State Office of Administrative Hearings in the matter of contested case of Texas State Board of Pharmacy versus Blue Mint Pharmacy and Jonah Russian. For procedural history, Blue Mint Pharmacy holds pharmacy license 28639, and Miss Russian holds pharmacist license 43390. The ALJs found by the preponderance of the evidence that Blue Mint Pharmacy and Miss Russian, as the pharmacist in charge, had violated the Act and the board's rules because Miss Russian dispensed controlled substances she knew or should have known were not issued for a legitimate medical purpose, that she failed to comply with all state and federal laws and rules governing the practice of pharmacy. As the PIC, she failed to ensure the pharmacy was in compliance with all state and federal laws and rules, that she failed to exercise sound judgment with respect to the accuracy and authenticity of prescriptions she was filling. She failed to make every reasonable effort to ensure the prescriptions were issued for a legitimate medical purpose by a practitioner in the course of medical practice, and that she failed to practice pharmacy in an acceptable manner consistent with the public health and welfare by dispensing prescriptions she knew or should have known were not issued for a legitimate medical purpose. For the pharmacy, while they are also responsible for Ms. Russian's actions and inactions, the ALJs also found the pharmacy allowed its agents and employees to dispense drugs outside the usual course of professional practice, and that Blue Mint failed to establish and maintain effective controls against diversion of prescription drugs. At the hearing, board staff presented evidence that Ms. Russian and the pharmacy engaged in non-therapeutic dispensing of controlled substances. The evidence included dispensing data from the pharmacy, along with analysis, admissions from Ms. Russian obtained during the investigation, and expert testimony from one of the board's compliance officers. Consistent with the ALJ's recommendation, board staff is asking the board to revoke the pharmacy license of Blue Mint Pharmacy and revoke the pharmacist license of Jonah Russian. The ALJs made several troubling findings of fact about Ms. Russian's and the pharmacy's practice, including that over a 1-year period, 95% of patients received hydrocodone and carisoprodol in combination, that patients got the same maximum strength doses in large quantities from a small number of prescribers, none of whom were pain specialists. There was a lack of individualized drug therapy. There was also evidence that Ms. Russian fraudulently entered information into the prescription monitoring program. Board staff has prepared 2 board orders, one for the pharmacy and one for Ms. Russian, reflecting the recommendations of the ALJs, and staff urges the board to adopt those orders.
Questions for John? I have a motion. Oh, yes, so we need to verify that there's nobody here from the pharmacy or Ms. Russian. And let the record state, or the record show that neither a representative of the pharmacy or the pharmacist are present. Now I'd like to find out what the board's pleasure is.
Quick question, can you kind of dumb it down for me? What actually happened? You were just dispensing?
I mean, very simply, they were a pill mill. They were dispensing opioids, hydrocodone primarily, and carisoprodol, which is a muscle relaxant, to 95% of the patients that were walking in the door. That was their business model.
And that's part of the red flags that we educate on, and that pharmacists are to look for
So it is to revoke the license of the pharmacist as well as the pharmacy. That was the recommendation from our, or from the judge.
From the two judges.
Two
So
judges.
if you're, are you looking at, there should be a folder on your laptop that says disciplinary orders. And when you open that up, there's two in there, H.1 Blumen Pharmacy and H.1 Russian Common Jonah. And so those are the two orders, court orders that staff is putting forward. And then behind those two orders, or attached to them, is, what came from the State Office of Administrative Hearings. And so you can see, the full proposal for a decision that was sent from the two SOA judges. And that's where they lay out everything that, John was going over with you. That's what he was
Right.
going through. So when you look at these two orders here, you can see that the proposed ones that are before you right now can revoke those licenses.
I recommend we go with the judge's ruling.
So those are to be separated or together?
They can be together.
We know, yeah. So I have, and your motion is for both,
I'm making a motion, yeah.
for both pharmacy and the pharmacy. Okay, so currently we have a motion, for the license of the pharmacy and the pharmacist, and we have a second. That motion is to revoke,
It's to adopt
Or
the proposed orders.
to adopt the proposed orders, correct? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much, John.
All right, with that, we have completed our agenda. I would remind those in the audience that if you are looking for CE, to make sure that you use the QR code. And with that, if I can have a motion to adjourn. I have a motion from Ian, and a second from Brad. I shall adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your service.